Hey everyone, welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience live viewer question and answer session. If you're here for the live chat, we'll start momentarily. If you're here on demand, just go to the description, skip ahead, and boom, you'll be when the actual show starts. I do want to let you know a few things coming up tomorrow. Kentucky Derby breakdown, which is always fun. It's going to have Cam Stewart and Tim Andacust on the line, so he's picked a winner like 7 straight years, so it's the one thing he can't curse. He once cursed a horse and picked him to win the Kentucky Derby, came second, and had to be put down on the course, and ever since, it broke the curse, and he just hits winners all the time. So you'll actually want to hear, for the first time ever, what he has to say. Friday, Jake Seeley's on the show to break down dynasty rankings for fantasy football, so make sure to keep tuned to the DraftKings YouTube channel or the Pat Mayo Experience audio feeds, which you can find on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Audio Boom, Google Play, iHeartRadio. Wherever you can download an audio podcast, you can find the Pat Mayo Experience. Remember to subscribe, rate, and review, preferably 5 stars. Also, the last thing, new at Fantasy National this week, 2 new tools. One is the mixed condition model, which allows you to set date ranges on certain elements of a course. So this week for the Wells Fargo, setting the course at over 7,400 yards and firm greens and looking at strokes gained approach over the past 24 or past 50 rounds or whatever date you prefer, that is now available to mix in to your own condition model to use in conjunction with your actual custom model. So go become a member now, check that out. Plus, in the lineup generator section, you can now edit your lineups manually on the site before uploading them to the site where you want to play. So it's a great thing to get in, and if you get the 1-week membership now, if you want to test it out, you get all the Wells Fargo for today, and it rolls into the next week, and you'll get the Players Championship as well, and there's some great looking contests on DraftKings next week. Big prize pools to be had at the Players Championship. Reid Fowler will be joining me on the show, so start piling in your questions now, and let's get to it. Time to go.
Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience Wells Fargo Championship live question and answer period. We're on YouTube right now, so that's going to be the place to primarily leave your questions. I'll try to get to them all throughout the course of this live chat. We have no restriction on how long we need to be, although I prefer not to be sitting here for the next 8 hours before like my head explodes like it does in the intro, and that would just be no good for me. I want to let everyone know, if you missed the intro, go become a member at Fantasy National today. There are brand new tools up on the site right now, and if you get in today, you get all the Wells Fargo information and access to the tools, and it will go into Wednesday of next week, so you'll get the Players Championship as well. 1-week membership gets you 2 tournaments. There's a big one because DraftKings next week has giant prize pools for the Players Championship, so you're gonna want to go check that out. Joining me where he is, it's like, I don't know, like 3 in the morning or something, live from Hawaii. It's Reid Fowler. What's going on, my man?
I'm doing pretty well. The time difference, obviously, this background is actually changing quite a bit with us too. But yeah, back here for our friend's wedding, excited to be here. And, you know, I'll try and get this tournament and all of my facts straight. So you got to help me out on that one.
Is your maid going to become make a cameo here and do your laundry in the background while we wait?
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to make sure that I didn't check in any bags because it's like $50 checking a bag. So this is the only shirt I got.
All right, well, I mean, you're going to be looking pretty sharp at that wedding. I'm not going to lie to you. Anyway, again, leave your questions in the YouTube chat, or you can leave them on Twitter to me. If there's a Periscope feed that goes up for this, you can't really read questions off Periscope because they disappear. So if you just at me and put in like DK Wells is the hashtag. Let's do that. DK Wells. And Wells the tournament, not Wells the bartender from Bachelor in Paradise, who seems like a pretty cool guy. But DK Wells, leave your questions on there and I'll just scan through Twitter. It'll be a very easy way to keep those together and I can go answer those now. First things first, let's talk about the weather. It doesn't seem like there's going to be any distinct advantage between Thursday and Friday. I'm using the Charlotte International Airport weather station on windfinder.com. Looking at it right now, it does seem like there's going to be gusts very early in the morning. First tee time and lineup lock is 7 a.m. It does appear that there's going to be 17 knot per hour, so 20 mile per hour gusts from 7 till 8, then it evens out throughout the course of the day. The next day, it's going to be a little bit windier, and it might cool down towards the end of the day, but the majority of players are going to be playing during gusty and somewhat windier periods, so it doesn't seem to be any sort of distinct advantage for any sort of draw, at least from what I can see right now. I mean, the weather might change 8 hours from now, so check back. Windfinder.com is what I use for all of that. Reid, right off the hop, who are you picking to win this week?
I mean, for me, the guy that I really like at this tournament, I mean, how do you go away from Luke List, right? This guy is in a prime spot.
I mean, yeah, he is, but like Rory's playing.
True, right? Rory's the course horse. I mean, all signs point to Rory. Kind of folded on Sunday at Augusta, but this is his course. I can see that. But for me, I'd like we talked about. I don't want to be off on List when he actually pops. So for me, it's going to be Luke List.
Yeah, so I mean, I've bet Luke List to win. I'm using him in my DraftKings lineups. I wish this was like DraftKings 2 years ago when Luke List would be the chalkiest guy at $10,000, he'd miss the cut, and then people would be like, I'm never using Luke List again. And it seems like he's going to be one of the highest owned guys now that he's dropped over $2,500 in price. I am still the only concern. I brought this up yesterday to Rick on the DraftKings show, so everyone can go back and check out the show from Tuesday with Rick Gaiman, and then on Monday with Jeff Feinberg. The one thing about List is he tends to play these shorter courses a lot better than the longer courses, despite being a gigantic bomber. So maybe it's something like Gary Woodland in that sense, where he just tends to play well at these short courses. It's not going to get me off of him, but it's not going, like if he plays poorly this week, I might have to start factoring that in. So maybe the Players and Colonial might be a spot to use Luke List. Hey, maybe 1 week he'll putt too, so who knows. I think Rory, he is the overwhelming betting favorite, but I think that him and Justin Thomas have to be, like, if you're really going to gravitate towards guys at the top, like I'm not using any Rickie Fowler this week. I'm just going to use shares of Rory, shares of Justin, and then even start some of my teams with Day or Hideki and work down a more balanced roster from there. Do you have any sort of feel about Rickie? Like, are you going to be using him?
I mean, he's a guy that really hits his long irons well. So at this course, right, I mean, if you're taking less than driver, or even if you're hitting driver and let's say you bomb it out there 300 yards, you still have 9 par 4s between that 450 to 500 yards. So a guy like Rickie plays well with the long irons, and he's going to be the least owned guy at the top there, along with, I think, Jason Day. But even Jason Day garners a lot of name recognition. So if you're fading those guys at the top and you feel like, okay, well, Rory is the most expensive, and there are guys down in that high 6, low 7 range that you can pair with Rory, and even some guys in that, high 7. So for me, I'm going to be off on Rickie just because I need to see current form. And right now, outside of Augusta, which is a kind of a corollary with a difficult track plus long course, I can see that. But right now, even though this is where he got his first win, I don't trust Rickie at that price.
Yeah, it does seem like Rickie will come in as the lowest owned of the top 3 guys. So if you wanted to get away from some of that ownership or even potentially some of that build, because where you kind of mentioned the pricing is relatively soft and there are guys in the upper $6,000 and lower $7,000 area that can feasibly make one of these top guys work with another stud too, not necessarily Rory and Thomas, but if you wanted to go like Rory and Phil or Rory and Tiger or Rory and Hideki, something like that, you can make lineups that you look at and you're like, oh, that's not so bad. Can you let the people know, because I don't want people to be thrown off track here, what happened to you in terms of making DraftKings lineups this week?
Yeah, so Hawaii doesn't allow you to make DraftKings lineups. It's just obviously with the rules and regulations with gaming. So I made lineups, but didn't submit them when I was in the jurisdiction. So I have my lineups set, but you talked about it before we started the show. I'm going to delete all of them. Yeah. So I don't see how well or how bad I did. So that's going to happen. Well,
let's throw that out there to the chat. What do? You built these lineups to enter into the tournaments, forgot to enter them. Now you can't. I am under the impression that you just destroy these lineups. Because listen, if you go back and you look at them after the fact and they were all losers, that's just going to make you feel bad anyway. But it will make you feel a whole lot worse if you had the winning lineup and you weren't able to submit it.
No, not going to do it.
So
it's just going to, it's gone.
Yeah, let's just hear from the people on that one. What would you guys do if you fell into the same sort of situation that Reed's in right now? Let's go to the chat, start getting to the questions. First one up, Eric asks, thanks for the hang. Thank you, Eric, for coming along. Does the Brooks Koepka injury/layoff lower your expectations on him this week? No. For me, I actually think this presents a really nice buying opportunity on Brooks Koepka, whether it be in the DraftKings market or the betting market. The betting lines on Brooks Koepka have been just a sinus curve all week in terms of, or sine curve, sorry, all week, in terms of what his odds, I have bad sinuses. I might be sneezing halfway. It's finally nice in Toronto and all the flowers are blooming and I'm finally all stuffed up. You know, we're getting shorts weather, so now I can't breathe. Only makes sense. In terms of Brooks, it looked like he was fine last week. It wasn't him who sunk his team. It was Mark Turnstiles. So Brooks shook off the rust. He looks great, and you're not going to get Brooks at this price all this often. And he opened, like, on Bet365 this week, he opened at like 35 to 1, instantly dropped to 40. And I thought about laying him at 40. And then all of a sudden on Bovada, he's 75 to 1. Now he's kind of marketed out around 50 to 1 in betting markets. And even by the Fantasy National ownership projections, he's going to be in the single digits. He's the pivot play, really. Not the only one, because we'll get to some other good ones in the $8,000 range later on. That he's going to be like 6-7% owned. You're just not going to get that sort of upside. Like, if Brooks was healthy coming into this, he'd probably be $10,000. So you're getting a $1,500 discount. Now, you have to assume the risk that maybe he's not in form, and maybe he's just going to be a disaster. Who knows? But this is a course that sets up very well for Brooks. You're getting him at an ownership discount. I wouldn't use him in cash games because there's just no need to. You don't have to inherit that kind of risk. But in tournament play, you can be massively overweight to the field, almost have 3 times the field of Brooks Koepka if you use him at 20%. So I think that's the move that I want to take. Although for the least, the risk adverse, they probably don't want to do that. What do you think people should do with Brooks Koepka, Reid?
Yeah, I mean, 3 months off, right? Especially with the wrist injury, it's tough to see. I mean, we've seen other guys like Heimer, and some of these guys have wrist injuries where we don't necessarily know where they are. But Brooks is a talent. He's a top 10 guy, and he hasn't played for 3 months. You're not going to see him at this price, right? Where we saw him win again at Erin Hills. Similar course in terms of distance and having to keep it in the fairway, because if you were in that rough, obviously it was a tough go. That's not necessarily a course corollary. But at that price, and you look at the guys around him, like Finau, he's going to be highly owned. Even Ryan Moore, who's a course horse here, who's been playing really well off the tee, and just in general, Webb Simpson, same thing. That guy at 8,600, you're not going to get Brooks, that type of talent, right? We'll see it in other price ranges as well. Some guys who are falling in to those price tiers that just their talent outweighs what they're priced at. So I like that play as well. Because like you're saying, if you're making 20 lineups and you got them at 5-6% projected ownership, even if it's 10, if you go 20, that's not a lot at all. And I'd be willing to take that risk as well.
Tiger Woods 14 asks, thanks for hanging out, Eldrick. What do you think about Webb Simpson this week? He's going to be one of the guys that I'm fading in this situation. This is a home course for Webb. We've seen him play well here before. He was second to Rory, tied with Patrick Rogers back in 2015 when Rory went nutso and beat the field by like 12 strokes. And that Sunday was one of the best performances I've ever seen anyone have. It was a lot like his Sunday at API earlier this year. He was just unconscious, sticking everything to 10 feet and making every single putt. He was probably even better that day at Quail Hollow because he wasn't sticking everything to 10 feet. He was sticking everything to 2 feet. You always see this from Rory, that when he's just on, he's so much better than everybody else. And this is a course that's conducive to that. Webb, like, you look at the pricing, and you see the guys that are around Webb, and Webb projects out to be relatively popular. I want to see right now what I'm looking for in terms of actual ownership, but I know that he's about triple some of the guys around him. He's about on the same plane as Ryan Moore. I like Ryan Moore slightly better. I said I'm already playing Brooks. I like Tony Finau, so I will be playing him. Below that, Bryson, Berger, and Noren are all there. They'll be around the same ownership. I like them more. So it just kind of got to the weeding out period where I don't hate Webb Simpson. Like if he was $7,500, I'd have no problem playing him. I'd like him more than the guys in that range. It's just the ones that he's around that I don't really like. And there are two really good pivot plays in this area. One is Kevin Kisner. Coming off, everyone's going to hate him if they bet on him last week at the Zurich, like I did, but I'm not afraid to go like 15% Kisner. But like you look at the ownership projections for them right now. Webb Simpson is projected to be around anywhere between 12.5% and 15%. And the two guys right below him, Kisner and Henley, 3.5 to 4% for Kisner, 3 to 4.5% for Henley. I can take whatever shares I would need to invest in Webb just to match the field, cut them in half, and I can put those on those two guys, thus diversifying my risk a little bit. And I think those two guys are either better or equal players to Webb Simpson. And even with Russell Henley, because there's another question in the chat about, they said, I said I liked him. I just like him because of an ownership play. And Tee to Green, he's really, really good. He's one of those players that doesn't hit the ball a long way, yet still gains gains an awful lot of strokes with his driver. And we just saw him perform really well at Augusta T15. He was top 10 at Shell before that. He just seems to be a really good play whenever no one's on him. Whenever you get like chalky Henley, you probably want to stay away. But he has made 5 consecutive cuts. I do like him in this spot as a pivot playoff some of these higher owned guys in this region. Where do you like at the $8,000 level here?
Yeah, those low guys that you talked about. I mean, if you see a guy like Noren, right, at that price, who we always do this, where Noren comes in at this price, like if he misses a cut or if he doesn't do well, right? A lot of us were on him at Augusta and he missed the cut. And so we fade off of Noren. This guy is a top 10 or just outside of top 10 in the world talent. So I really like Noren. I really like DeChambeau. Obviously, those are the chalky guys down there. You see Bryson, he can play in strong fields. We saw it at API. I mean, he was there with Rory. So I like those guys. But going back to Webb, right, it's kind of like we get this. Webb gets this bump going to Quahala because it's his home course or he's from here. But like you were saying, at that price, if you look at a guy like Ryan Moore, Brooks Koepka, there are other play Kisner as well, right? There are other players out there that I'd rather go off of because Webb, right, he's got to be putting well. He's 4th, I believe, in strokes gained putting in the last 24, and he's pretty atrocious off the tee. Now, he's playing a little bit better off the tee than he usually has, but he has to be putting well. If he's not, then at that price, you're not going to get a return. I'd rather get, like you were saying, those ownership pivots, because if you get a Kisner who pops, who's now playing a little bit better than he has at the beginning of the season, I'd rather take that risk as opposed to depending on Webb to score on par 5s like he is this season, as well as putting. So I'm going to be off on Webb as well.
And although there are no strokes gained metrics for the Masters, it's safe to say that Russell Henley probably gained through his irons, especially long irons on those longer courses, which makes it now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 of his past 14 tournaments, he's been in the positives in strokes gained approach. And it's not like he's gaining a half stroke on the field. 2.3, 6.1, 2.4, 4.4, 2.7. So that elite long iron game, which he does have, and always a better putter on Bermuda, even when you just go look at his splits. He's about a neutral putter as it pertains to POA. He gains about 0.3 strokes per round on bent, and he gains about 0.5 per round on Bermuda. I think all of his wins have come on Bermuda as well. I can't remember what shell is in terms of putting surfaces. I think it's a mix between bent and either way. It just tee to green, he's always someone that gets overlooked, so I do like him as an ownership play. Next question is from Jordan. Jordan says, what do you think of fading the top, starting with Fleetwood and throwing in a few 8K guys? This is the strategy that I employed at the Heritage when I cashed really big in the $5 and won all that money. So if you're playing one lineup, it's really tough to do because the winner is just by probability, if you're going to isolate a group of people, probably going to come from that upper 10K range. Just a spoiler from fantasynational.com, there is a projection model in terms of an event simulator. Do you know who the #1 guy is in that this week, Reed?
It better not be Webb.
It is not Webb, no.
Okay. Is it List?
No, it is Jason Day. Jason Day has, if you ran this tournament 1,000 times, he'd win like 81 times, according to the simulator. It's not something to take as gospel, but it's really interesting to note. The last time that this came true for Jason Day, that he topped the projection model, was at Torrey Pines this year, 21. Although, as we've seen from the past few tournaments, whether it be Kadira or even Landry after, I mean, no one really saw those guys winning, so it goes on that. The problem with the balanced roster is I like it if you're playing 20 lineups. You can dedicate 4 or 5 to playing that way, but you have to understand that if one of these big guys goes off, whether it be Rory, Rickie, Justin, or even Day, or even Hideki, who's getting some more buzz now too, is that you just have no chance of even cashing at that point because everyone else has them and you don't. So if you're playing a single entry, I understand the contrarian nature of it, and if that does work out, you're going to be at the very top, so maybe you do want to take that risk, but I just think it's a low probability play and something much better for mass multi-entry. I do like Fleetwood. I'm using a ton of Fleetwood. It's just he's usually my second guy or potentially third guy on some all 9K builds rather than just being my anchor. Would you go with that formula?
No, I'm with you because like you were saying, and especially Jason Day, if you look at his splits, like he plays really well on difficult tracks in difficult fields. So when you're talking about Day specifically, you can also pair him with Fleetwood. If you fade those top guys, it gives you some salary leverage there to do that. So I wouldn't necessarily just start at 9K. Like you said, I like the contrarian play where you're not going to get a lot of guys who want to do that because of the power that Rory comes at this course. And JT, when you see where he's coming in the rolling stats on Fantasy National. A guy like Justin Thomas ranks out number one if you look at over the long haul in terms of past 50, 36 rounds. So I wouldn't necessarily fade the top because you have those guys coming in great form. Or if not, right, like you were saying, the probability of those guys hitting is much higher. Fleetwood is a great play, but like you were saying, as that second guy to then go down right to the high sevens or the mid sevens where there is a lot of talent. So I'm not going to fade the top just because of that. But if for cash, sure, it's a good play.
I want to remind everyone to just go down to the bottom of the screen, give the episode a like. Goes a long way to help keep this chat free. You don't want a premium chat because then no one's going to watch and no one wants to pay for a premium chat. So we got to keep this free, people, and helping spread the word and giving a like and a review and everything like that really does go a long way to help keeping it free. This one's from Twitter, and it is from @golfers. Like furs, like if you're wearing a fur. It's a good name. If you had to pick one to lead after round one, so a first round leader, who would it be from these four guys? Tony Finau, Brooks Koepka, Ryan Moore, or Webb Simpson? I think it's Tony Finau because that guy kills first rounds.
Yeah, especially with birdies, right? I mean, he's great. Now, it's hard because it sucks seeing a guy like Finau come out or any of these first round leaders come out really hot. You get those extra bumps for getting that first place, but then you see them continuously go down right as the days progress, and your cash out go down as the days progress. But yeah, I like Finau there just because in terms of his ability to get birdies, now to close out a tournament, we haven't seen Finau do it that well. But yeah, out of those four guys, Finau, Ryan Moore, he's interesting because he scores on par fives as well. And what we've seen before this change, right, Koepka changed, the strategy was scoring those par fives. And Ryan Moore has been doing that, and he's getting away with his off the tee game in terms of distance because he's extremely accurate. So yeah, he would be in a second, but I like Finau there as well.
Yeah, I mean, just there is something to it. Tony Finau, whether it was at Genesis, I think there was another one earlier this year too. Torrey Pines, he just storms out of the gate right away, and then he falters back on the weekend because he's Tony Finau, and he can't possibly keep it going for all four rounds. So next question comes from Ponderosa Sports. Matsuyama, Phil, Finau stack. Thoughts? I think I might actually have like 2 or 3 lineups that are, I don't have my exact lineups in front of me as we speak, but those sound like a lineup I would have built this week. I'm not going to lie to you. I do like that start, to be perfectly honest with you. Do you?
Yeah, Phil is another guy here that plays really well, right? We kind of bucket Phil into this. He can't hit the ball off the tee, but he's doing that more so than he has in years past. And again, if you look at a Phil versus Tiger, right, comparison, or if you look at other things, Phil is actually coming out a lot better in that price range. So I'd rather choose Phil, even though he's $100 more. Phil strikes me as a guy who can get around and can score a lot of birdies, right? Phil is the guy who he might get you a double, but he gets you birdies. He gets you eagles. We saw that at Augusta where he came back after, I believe it was Saturday, where he came out like triple bogey and double, and then he stormed back and got a couple eagles, birdies, and that's what you need in DraftKings, right? Those birdie or better. So I like that stack a lot because Phil, we're not talking him up a lot, but he is a guy that can score here.
And it's an interesting situation, and this bleeds into the next question from Andrew, who says, even though Fantasy National projects Phil at 17.4% ownership, I feel like the industry isn't talking much about Phil from a DK perspective, and I think that could be true. The hardest thing to do, and the way that the Fantasy National ownership projections work, it uses an internal system of what the users on the site are actually doing. And generally speaking, you have a more advanced player if you're signing up to participate in a golf data system and everything like that, rather than your casual player. And any time that you get Tiger in a tournament, it just tends to attract more casual players. And the Tiger variance and how he can swing ownership, and some weeks we've been at like 10% off on where Tiger is going to be on the low end. Like thinking that he'd be, oh, everyone's going to play Tiger, he's going to be 25% owned. Then he comes in at like 11. Be like, oh, people are backing off Tiger, and all of a sudden he's 28% owned. So he actually has a direct correlation of what happens to Phil in terms of ownership this week. Now, I've heard Phil more highly touted than Tiger so far, and I think that Rick put it really well on Tuesday's show, is that when you look at them side by side and assess them, a winning perspective, I mean, they're probably around the same probability odds to win. And if one of them wins, you're going to want to have them. But from a straight DK scoring perspective, Tiger just pars a lot of holes. He generates a lot of his DK points from where he finishes. Phil, like you mentioned, with birdies, eagles, bogeys, doubles, he's just a better DraftKings performer. Generally speaking, he will outperform wherever he finishes on the leaderboard in terms of DraftKings points against the field that week, where Tiger finishes like 5 to 10% lower than his finishing position. So I think that's something to know. That's why I like Phil more than Tiger this week. And I don't really know where he's going to end up coming in. Like, if he was at 20%, you could talk me into that. If he was at 12%, you could talk me into that. All I know is I'm going to use him this week, and I won't be using Tiger. Are you using Tiger at all?
No, and I don't necessarily know, right? Outside of these courses and these tournaments that Tiger plays really well, Bay Hill and some of these other places, Bridgestone, where are we going to use Tiger? I keep on thinking about that because of that narrative and because of it being true, is that you get a Tiger bump and you get all these casual golfers. You get so much people playing Tiger because of name recognition, and people just want to cheer for Tiger. So where do you play Tiger, right? I think all of us in the industry as well want to see Tiger do well, because that kind of brings us back to the glory days of golf in terms of when we were watching it earlier. But I can't think of a tournament, especially this season right now, where I would want to play Tiger, especially in those price ranges where if he's at 10,000, right, you're saying, okay, that's a little pricey for him. But even if he's down here, you see in a stronger field where Tiger's not playing the Putacana, right? He's not playing in these smaller tournaments. You see guys in his price range that you'd rather play more. So I'm not going to play any Tiger. I'd rather go Phil, especially in that spot. But even in other tournaments, I'm trying to figure out where I would play Tiger, because you have to be overweight on Tiger if you play him.
Yeah, I mean, you can be field if you want. I suppose that's going to be the case. I'm just going to go straight fade because, like you mentioned, I just like the other guys around him a whole lot more. I think the name that's getting lost in that region is Paul Casey, to tell you the truth. I'm not playing him, but I know that I should. I'm just not, because I like Tommy Fleetwood a little bit more. That's just me. And I'll play Tony Finau instead. Hell, I'll play Ryan Moore, which, just saying it out loud, sounds really stupid. But this is where I'm going with it this week. And maybe I can avoid a chalk bomb or potential the pivot bomb where, no one's playing that guy. I'll go on to him. He just sucks anyway. Though Paul Casey rarely sucks, especially at a course where he can hit driver all the time. And this is what he's going to be doing this week. But in terms of Tiger, this is going to be a litmus test on what his ownership should be like for a lot of the rest of the year. The Millionaire Maker at the U.S. Open might be a little bit different. Next week at the Players, just where it's the DraftKings tournaments are so big, it might draw in some new people, and it's a very popular tournament. But when you get your standard events with Tiger Woods, again, almost like Phil, you could sell me anywhere between 10% and 25%. I think that he'll come in around 15, and that's just too high for my liking. But it'll be very curious to see where it's not such a huge tournament this week, it's not really on the tip of people's tongues in terms of your casual fan. Just be like, Tiger's playing, I'm excited, but I don't know what the hell the Wells Fargo Championship is, so I might not even watch. I didn't even know it was happening, so I might not play this week. The Players will be something different with that. I hope that made any sense. This guy asks, Hello, Fields. How big is your player pool when building 20 lineups? I think it depends on the week. I think it depends on how strongly you feel about the players. I try not to go massively overweight on, and when I say overweight, like this week, I have a more diverse set of players. There's 156 players in the field. There's a lot of really good players, so I want to have some exposure. But all I'll say is it depends on the tournament. It depends on the type of player you are and the amount of risk that you want. So you can narrow your core down to 13 players, and if those guys hit, you're going to win a ton of cash this week. I've given myself a few more outs, but the one thing I will not do is if I use a player, I will use him at least 10%. He'll be in at least 2 lineups because I don't want to get it right once with the right guy, and he's on a team with 4 guys who missed the cut. Or 1 guy who misses the cut, and I could have had him on another one. So I think with the lower end guys, that's the easiest way to go. So guys for me this week that are like that, Vaughn Taylor, I'm playing, who has a good course history here. Good off the tee, good with the pros. Keith Mitchell is one of them. I think I've posted in 2 lineups. I don't want to go massively overweight on a $6,700 player. No matter how confident I may be in, they're still a $6,500 player. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And you're saying too, right? This tournament, you don't need to make a stance. Like some of the majors, right? Well, not some, all of the majors, you kind of have to make a stance at the top where you can't be playing all the guys at the top because it's just not smart in terms of building your lineups. Like you were saying, we talk about this every week, is it's really up to you and the style of play that you want. You can build core guys. And if you want to, if you feel comfortable, like we talked about earlier in the earlier question, if you feel comfortable with building lineups starting at 9K and going down, that's fine. I always like to get core players in each price range and see how I can mix and match, and then be right? If I have core players like a DeChambeau or Luke List, I like to, like you said, mix them in too with some of the guys that I'm taking flyers on, right? The Wonder Boy, Joaquin, he's another guy, right, that you can potentially get in some of those lineups. So your player pool is dependent on who you are, but for me, I like getting core players in each of those price ranges and then mixing and matching.
From Twitter, golfers ask again. So quick one, fade or play? Andrew Landry, fade or play?
Fade.
Fade for me as well. Trey Mullinax, fade or play? It's a play for me.
Yeah, play for me as well.
Grayson Murray, fade or play?
He can't putt on these types of services, no way.
He did play well at Quail Hollow at the PGA Championship last year, but I'm on the fade train with you. I just think I can't be super chalky down at the bottom end because I have most of the popular low-end 7K, upper 6K guys that I think he's going to be another popular one. Almost the same reason I'm not playing Griot or Ben An in that upper $7,000 area. Just, you can't take all the chalk. So he's just one of the guys that fell by the wayside. Back to YouTube. Is 60%, oh, geez, that really gone off on me. Is 60% Fleetwood too much or not enough? I mean, like I said, I didn't play anyone, I think, over 45% this week. So for me, it would be too much. But again, that's a personal thing. If you want to play 100% Fleetwood, if you think Fleetwood's going to win, play 100% Fleetwood. Then you'll really cash in, right?
Yeah, but the thing about Fleetwood, you talked about it, you addressed it in your earlier shows. This tournament is extremely hard when you're looking at putting between 5 and 10 feet. And I've seen Fleetwood, I think more times than not, and this could definitely be recency bias, miss those short putts where they're just been him just not paying attention to those short putts.
But that's fine, though, because everyone's going to be missing them.
True, but if you're 100% or if you're 65% of Fleetwood in your lineups, you kind of want that to be a little bit less. So yes, you're right. All the guys are going to miss it. But if you're that heavily overweight, that's something that's the risk that you got to be willing to swallow there. So
Gary asked, the most important question of the week, who is Anderkirk? He thinks it's Francesco Molinari. It's actually Jason Day. That's Tim's one and done pick this week. Doesn't mean he can't, have a decent performance. Probably means he's not going to win, though. So I'm sure that the Fantasy National Simulator did not take that into account. So it really should. That should be a weighted influence because Tim has now been making golf picks for 3 straight years and has yet to pick a winner, which is kind of hilarious. And then you have Francesco. I'm not playing Francesco because I don't play Francesco. Sometimes I do, but mainly, especially whenever I have Leone on the show, I just go out of my way. Tomskins44 asks, can we get a James? Sorry for blowing out your speakers, people. Thoughts on him this week? I used him in 15% of my lineups. He's won here before. He's decent off the tee, can be really good with long approaches, and just has a really good course history. He makes the cut every year at Quail Hollow, and he's one of those guys. I talked about Ben An. I talked about Emiliano Grillo. So in that range, the only 2 guys that I'm using are James Hahn and Keegan Bradley before I go down to 7,500, and I'm using some Sam Burns to get off Chesson Hadley, who I'm also not using. But those are the only 2 guys. I find this a really dead range because I don't find that these players are significantly better than the players who are $500 to $600 cheaper. So it's going to kill their ownership for sure, but you don't love their talent. Hahn is a guy that I'll be using. Will you be using James Hahn?
Yeah, he burned me, man. I had so much Hahn. I think it was at RBC, and he just burned the hell out of me. But he's a guy that right, he was missed cuts after missed cuts before he got his win here. So he can pop at any time, right? He can miss a cut like he did, and he can do well here. So I have some ownership in my fake lineups of James Hahn. But like you said, there's guys a little bit above and then even $400 to $500 lower than his price that I like a little bit more. So I do like Hahn just because before that miscut, he was a cut maker this season. And he's, he has some course history here. Not, you don't want to weigh course history too much, but who knows? This guy was missing cuts and then he won here. So I'm going to take that risk as well.
The White Moses asks, in a high-stakes head-to-head hair versus hair matchup, I like this a lot, with one guy, I know my opponent is going to use Rory. Would you play Rory banking on my duds being better than his duds, or just going to the middle tier? It's an interesting question. Do you think you know more about golf and you're a better DraftKings PGA player? Then I'd say just match Rory and go on your way. Or just use Justin Thomas and hope Justin Thomas beats Rory, and then you're looking good. I mean, if you know more, then I'd say just match him and just make sure your other 5 guys beat the other 5 guys. What would you do? If you were playing me and you knew that I was using Rory, would you use Rory too, or would you just differentiate from me?
Yeah, I think you got to go with your gut. I think you have to play Rory because, like you said, he is the guy. He's the horse here. So if you can cancel that out, I would do that as well. And then if I were playing you, I'd try and go back and think all the guys that you would potentially play or that you like, and try and tweak the lineups a little bit like that. Or, right, try to get all of your similar lineups and then have one guy that's a little bit different. So that's a very interesting question. If it were Rory, yeah, I'd play Rory just so you can cancel that out and then try and, like you said, if you know more, then attack those mid ranges.
So people's solution to your conundrum here, Reid, is they want you to send them your DK name and your password so they can do it for you. Sounds very sensible, trusting people on the internet like that. Free Time asks, thoughts on Charles Howell's performance this week? Good history at Riviera too. Yes, and very good off the tee. I like Chucky 3 Sticks this week, and he's at a very reasonable price. You could probably use him in cash games if you wanted to. I have him at, I can actually look that up right now, what I have him at in terms of lineups, either 10 or 15%. I didn't use too much because I used more Adam Scott than I probably should have and more Luke List than I probably should have. And they're all down in that range, and I definitely have like double Kevin Streelman what I have of Charles Howell. But I do have somehow, let's see where I'm at here. To factor it by unique lineups of my 20 lineups, because that's all I'm playing this week. 10% Charles Howell, so he's in 2 of my lineups. So I did use him. And yeah, so we're good to go on that front. Any Twitter questions here? Let's see. Nope, nothing new in the Twitter channel. Go back to the YouTube chat. Why do you prefer Murray or Neiman? Like either or why do I prefer them? Because I've already said I'm not playing Grayson Murray. I am playing Neiman. Listen, he comes in hot, former #1 ranked amateur in the world, bombs it off the tee, and I just think this sets up really well for him. And he's a really good price. And I have a feeling that Grayson might actually come in more owned, as shocking as that sounds, because usually people hate playing Grayson because people hate Grayson. It just seems like he's setting up to be around the same ownership. And I want to play with the narrative here. I want the new stud on tour coming off a top 10. I'll take that.
Yeah, and to use a word that a lot of the football analysts use and that I don't really get is this guy is moxie, right? Like this guy comes in saying, hey, it's only a matter of time of me competing with these top guys. We kind of heard that from Patrick Reed when he said I'm a top 5 player, which, kind of came true. He won the Masters. He's never been, I think, higher than ranked 11th overall. We talk about golf ranking, but yeah, when we saw Neiman come in top 10 or 6th overall, he strikes, he pops, right? He's really good with his wedges. He's really good around the greens, and he's a guy that comes in playing really well. So yeah, I mean, you might as well take a little flyer on Neiman.
Damien asks, what do you think of JT Poston, who this is his home course this week? I feel like you have to have some of him. I don't think you have to have some shitty JT Poston, so let's calm down on that. You can have him if you like, because he's not going to be very highly owned, and maybe he knows the course well, but have to have him seems a bit extreme, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, off the tee, he's coming in top 25, but you don't have to have anybody. You don't have to have Rory. There's narratives out there. Well, maybe you have to have, that's a bad example, but you don't have to have I think 6,700 guy. There's no way. Come on.
This is true. I'm trying to see. I played him as a top 20 bet, so I'm just not going to use him on DraftKings. I think that's enough JT Poston exposure for me this week. Louis, he did well at the PGA last year. That's true. He did do well at the PGA last year. But this is not going to be set up to similar styles. He does, listen, he comes in hot. He played well with Charlo at the Zurich, especially in the final round last week. Churned out a top 5. Very good off the tee historically. Good Bermuda putter. I get why you would want to use Louis. It's just, I like the other guys around him better.
Yeah, and he's a pivot play, right? He's a pivot play off of that price range. So you can build some lineups, but we haven't seen Louis pop this year. Like yes, he comes in with some current form, but some of the places, and then you can also play the Augusta narrative, right? If you want to play that corollary. So in that price range, yeah, if you think again, Finau, even more Simpson going down and even above, right? Casey at 8,900. Yeah, Louis spots in there as a decent pivot play, but like you said, even guys down in that low 8K range to me are more of a play that I would be in on as opposed to Louis.
Ponderosa Sports, thoughts on Trey Mullinax? I like Mullinax, so I'm going to target Bombers. Of course I'm going to target Mullinax. That's why I was on him at Valero. So I'm going to be on him again this week. I don't think that he's a terrible fade, though, because I know a lot of people are kind of buying the hype in on Trey Mullinax just a little bit. And generally speaking, if you can avoid a potential double-digit ownership guy in the $6,000 range, it's generally the savvy move to avoid that guy.
Yeah, and Lucas Glover. Are you playing Lucas Glover?
No, Lucas Glover and Grayson are the two guys I'm staying away from down there. Chalky.
But your boy Ruffles is right there at 69, right?
I bet him top 20, and that's enough for me.
Yeah, at 600 to 1. Yeah, the Trey Mullinax, you saw him kind of, fold towards the end there, but he's great. He's great off the tee. That's where he gets a lot of his, strokes gained, right? He bombs the ball, and he's a big dude. I didn't realize he was that big, but I'm going to be off a little. I'm going to have some ownership just because you see what he can do off the tee, but not too much.
Does Daniel Berger have a shot this week? Well, he's in the field, so yes. Do you have a take on Adam Hadwin? I do. I like Adam Hadwin here because he's Canadian and I'm Canadian, so I have to like him. I saw someone talking about this the other day. It's just some weird regional thing because that's not why I like Adam Hadwin this week. I'll get into that for a second, but it's like I really like this TV show because the stars from like the guy's from Texas and I'm from Texas, so I like it. Like it's such a how brutal does your life have to be that this is what like you're going to? Like, I need to identify with people from my region because I have nothing else going on. Like, just have your own opinions on things. Adam Hadwin gaining strokes off the tee, not over the long term, but over the short term, despite the fact that he's not long, very accurate, good with the long irons, and a great Riviera track record as well, which is another longer course, firmer greens, and that has to deal with a lot of long approaches. I think that Hadwin is very good on a lot of these courses where you can use some strategy off the tee. I'm still not sure why he withdrew from RBC Heritage, so maybe he's potentially injured. That was like a month ago now, so I wouldn't be too concerned about it. But I like Adam Hadwin here. I'm going to be using, I don't want to say a lot, but like 20% Hadwin.
Yeah, and he's top 10 tee to green. We see some of the key stats over the past when it was or before it was PGA National and they made the change, or excuse me, the PGA Championship and they made the change. Adam Hadwin comes in really nicely, and we've seen a guy like Hadwin not necessarily need the distance to do well, right? He did well at Augusta and some other places like Riviera where he doesn't need. It's the same thing with Ryan Moore. Is they don't need the distance off the tee because they're extremely accurate to getting in the short stuff, and they're able to place the ball in specific spots in the fairways to attack the greens with better angles. So you don't necessarily have to bomb it 330 yards. And if you're on the wrong side of the fairway, it's too bad. You can be further back and have a better angle. And a guy like Adam Hadwin, fits in that mold. So I like that as well.
Betting Bartender says the Mayo bump makes Henley 5 to 7% now. Oh, I certainly hope not. I don't really think I have that much influence on this. I think the people that were going to play him were going to play him regardless. Paul, who's switching the cameras for us, asked, Glover or Neiman? All caps, answer me now. You know the answer to that, Paul. You're just trying to troll back there. If I could look beyond this light, I'd see you. What's that?
I wrote that like half an hour ago.
I'm just getting to it now. I can't answer them in real time. There's a lot of questions. Next one. Does this course fit Anherban Lahiri? Does any course fit Anherban Lahiri? He's been garbage for like a year and a half. He's going to have his one round where he goes super low once every 8 weeks. So just play him in Showdown if you really like Anherban Lahiri so much, or bet him first round leader. Thoughts on JB Holmes, past champion at this event? There's actually a video clip out there, probably from the Fantasy Sports Network feed, from when I first started doing golf videos. I was doing golf shorts, like the ones that you do now, Reed, for DK Live. Oh. And I was giving my picks. It's after they redid the greens here, and I talked about like mini verde greens and how it helps JB Holmes. I didn't really quite understand what I was talking about, but he won, and he was like 80 to 1, so it was awesome. It's like helped establish some cred for me picking long shots. They still go back to it when they were like pitching stuff that the guy, Len, who owned the company, is like, show this to my golfing buddies. They love it because they don't understand what the hell's going on either. They're just like winners. I know people will be on Holmes because of the course history, and he'll probably come in super low owned, and I think that's the way his skill set is a good fit. I'm just not feeling it. I don't know why. I just don't like the form that he's been in recently. And the one good performance that he really had when he spiked at Torrey Pines, it was 100% based on putting. And that's not something you can count on from JB Holmes.
Yeah, and a guy right next to him, too, I can't figure out, because I share the same sentiment as you. JB Holmes, I can't really put my finger on him, but Ty Hatton is right there as well.
I'm in. Terrell Atten will be in my lineups.
Right. I mean, I get the current form that he's not necessarily playing well, but this guy earlier in the season, we were touting him as one of the top. We saw him pop at some of these other courses, tough fields like the WGCs. So, I mean, him at 7,400, like you said, and Hadwin, those two guys at that price range, if you want to fade off of List or Xander, you think Xander's going to get a lot of ownership, Ty Hatton right there is a beautiful play. And so I really like Hatton at that price. But yeah, for me, JB Holmes, no, sir.
The big thing about Hatton is, and this has been always a really good way to look at these things, just look at his world golf ranking versus the guys that he's all around in this range. He's still a top 20 player in the world. And these other guys ain't, put it that way. Yeah, some of them are like in the 40s or in the 60s or in the 100s, something like that. But just on quality of player, Hatton is significantly better than a lot of these guys.
Yep.
Next one. When making your lineups, 20 entry max, how big is your player pool? You can go back. I answered it like 10 minutes ago. Any love for Mullenix? Already answered that. Matsuyama wrist injury still scares me. Do you think he's fine? I would think so. He played the Masters. He was fine. I don't see why a month later it would be that big of a problem. Do you have any lingering concerns?
No, like you said, if these guys are playing, if they're not nursing any injuries, and you talk about golf players, right? They're probably the ones who would nurse these injuries a little bit more because of all of the time it takes to recover, and then just the wear and tear on there when they're practicing. But you also got to take into effect Hideki's also practicing as well. He wouldn't be practicing as well as playing as much as he is if he wasn't there. So I don't have any issue with Hideki's wrist injury. And plus, we don't know. I mean, how are we supposed to know where someone is in terms of their injury?
Greg asked about Tommy Fleetwood's ownership. I have him coming around 15 to 18%. But again, he's going to be one of the few players that's affected by Tiger, and since I have the projections low on him, it bumps up Phil, it bumps up Tommy, and it even bumps up Hideki in that range too. But if more people just gravitate towards Tiger, it's going to cap them. So the range of ownership projection for them, I think, is a little bit greater. But 15 to 18 sound about right to you?
Yeah, I think you can slot him in that. And again, for us, right, if you're building those 20 lineups, having a 5 or 6 lineup with Fleetwood is, almost double that. So that seems right.
Nikita asks, Tiger makes a top 10 on new clubs. That's almost a question. Very good. I like how if anyone else gets new clubs, they're unusable. But if Tiger gets new clubs, he's going to be inside the top 10. I don't think this stuff matters. That's just all noise. Eric says Woods off the tee has been awful. Yeah, that's why he's been playing better at those shorter courses. He was, just from, because we don't have the stats on it, but just from observing it, Tiger was a lot better off the tee at Augusta, and his irons really let him down. So maybe he's back to hitting his driver okay. Not that it was like lights out or anything, but it was significantly better. But over the longer term of the past 24 rounds, he's outside the top 100 in this field in strokes gained off the tee, where with his irons, he's inside the top 10. So I think it would regress back more to those means rather than just having an outlier performance where he was good with the driver and bad with the irons. What else do we have going on here? I'm staying away from Koepka this week, but I have you as a nice showing. That's a nice sentiment, Chris. Thank you. Honestly, I think Hideki goes overlooked this week compared to the other guys around him. Thanks, David. Where are some questions here? They're just...
Well, here's a question for you. What do you, because you talked about it a little bit in your show too, in terms of what angle you're playing, it is tough because we don't have all the course history because of the changes to Quail Hollow when the PGA Championship came through. What are you leaning in more? I think it has to be a mix, but I've been hard pressed to try to figure out what I want to lean in more, previous to that makeover or current.
Like in terms of how the course is going to set up?
Yeah. Is it? I mean, obviously it's not going to be the same as a major. It's going to be obviously much different than what we saw at PGA because it was the hardest course 2017. But it's got to be somewhere in the middle, right? I mean, I can't necessarily put my finger on it when you look at all the past history from this course. I want to just get your thoughts on that.
I think it'll lean back. Rory said it's playing about 2 to 3 strokes easier than it did at the PGA setup. That's what he came out and said this morning. So I'm going to have the lean towards the bombers, the guy that are good with the long irons and gain strokes off the tee. That's where I'm going with rather than a more balanced approach. But I do have a few of those shorter hitting lineups. I think I have 3 of them. They're just kind of a stack across the board. And I have them all paired together. I've mixed and matched like guys like Henley, guys like Kisner, guys like Ryan Moore, even Sam Burns for that matter, who actually does kind of jack it out there a little bit. So maybe he's a bad example. But I think that you can hedge against yourself a little bit by using those stacks, but predominantly I think the course will go back to not quite playing like it did, because I mean we're without like you mentioned earlier, without one of the par 5s. So that's going to decrease scoring just on the hole to begin with and really make the course more challenging because now it's a super long par 4. But on the whole, I think it plays more like it did in 2015 than it did the PGA Championship last year. So that's how I'm going about constructing my lineups. Next one is is using Kevin Streelman good for first-round leader bet? I believe he's coming at 66 to 1. When I had my Andrew Loup, Riviere de Loup, I had big cash on Andrew Loup here like 3 years ago. He split with Streelman as first-round leader. I don't think he's bad. He rates out number 1 in this field, or number 2. It's him or Bryson on scoring between par 4s between 450 and 500 yards from the past 24 rounds. So that's always a really encouraging sign. Another one of those shorter hitting guys that tends to make the cut here, really good off the tee, good with long irons, that you could put into one of those shorter hitting stacks if you wanted to go with it. So I like Kevin Streelman a little bit. Next one. Bryson will be very chalky, while Koepka won't, but I like those two a bit more. Then what? Okay. Thanks for the comment. If you're gonna like respond in the chat, like put like at someone that you're responding to, because now it's just confusing me. Thoughts on Louis Oosthuizen? Already went through that this week. I saw Ulrich picked him to win. Jeff picks basically Louis Oosthuizen to Ulrich is what I am to Luke List. He just picks him every week.
Yeah,
and we've both been wrong for every event in our history, except for that one time Louis won the Masters. But other than that, we're wrong every week when we pick these guys. Yeah. The course prefers a draw off the tee, and no one draws the ball better than Patty Reed. Why no love? Masters hangover. A little bit of Masters hangover. Again, he's really high priced for a guy that doesn't smash it off the tee, and where his big performance at this course was at a harder condition PGA Championship last season, and it might play easier and evolve back into the Bombers. He just seems overpriced based on the talent of some of the guys. Yeah, he's a good player. In your mind, is Patrick Reed a better player than Tommy Fleetwood?
No, not really.
I don't think he is either, and you're going to get Tommy at a much cheaper price. So
right.
That's why. And listen, if Phil's going to play a power cut off the tee, it's the same as a right-handed right-handed draw. Sorry. So Phil is cheaper, and he's has a much better course history long term, and the birdie or better percentage is good as well. So if like the winning score of this event is like -5, I think that Patrick Reed has a really good shot, unless he's just so dialed in consistently with those irons like he was at Augusta and making every putt that he just can't lose, then yeah, you'll want to be on Patrick Reed. He's a good pivot play. He's just not for me here.
Yeah, and again, he was in current form. It wasn't in current form, excuse me, right at the beginning of the season, right? He was virtually unplayable, and then all of a sudden we heard that he made some changes to his clubs right after he started performing well. It wasn't hey, he changed his clubs, now he's playing well. And so Patty Reed, my question to that person would be, where would you pivot, or why would you be using Patrick Reed? Would it be trying to, start your lineups with Patrick Reed at that price? Would it be potentially, doing a Rickie and Patrick Reed stack? That to me, like you were saying, Tommy Fleetwood is a better or close talent to Patrick Reed, and he's much, much less. So I'd rather go, well, not much less, but he's a lot less in terms of where you're getting Fleetwood as opposed to Patrick Reed.
Neiman top 10 parlay with the San Jose Sharks win tonight. That just sounds greedy. I mean, the Neiman top 10 is still like, I think it's like 6 to 1, 7 to 1, something like that. Why are you? Just bet that. I mean, that's probably pretty unlikely to happen as it is.
Yeah.
You don't need to start adding hockey games into it too. Is Grayson an ownership fade from away jersey 24? I believe he is. We talked about Grayson a little bit earlier, but we came in on the side of, yeah, he probably is an ownership fade. He's probably going to be in double digits. Low-end pivot, haven't heard too much about Austin Cook. The Fantasy National Simulator really likes him, and he does not have terrible form. I like him better at a bit shorter courses. In the simulator, now, this works both ways. The simulator always really likes Austin Cook, and because it liked him so much, it got me on him at the RSM, and he was an 80 to 1 winner. Since then, he's been kind of up and down. If you want to take the shot, he will be incredibly low owned, probably sub 1%. So if you're feeling it, then go with Austin Cook. He plays these longer par 4s really well, but I do worry about him at a longish type course. What do you think about Kevin Streelman? We both like him. We've kind of hit on that. Ponderosa Sports asks, Day Koepka combo is a contrarian build. Thoughts? I like the combo to start with. If it was, again, a single entry, I think that's probably unnecessarily contrarian, because both those guys as a starting point, like Day as a starting point without the top 3, will be contrarian enough on its own that you probably don't need the contrarian aspect of Brooks. Brooks is a nice mix in with like Rory or Justin Thomas, because they're going to project to be very highly owned where Brooks isn't. So I don't think you need to start going crazy with just contrarian picks all over the board. Look at my lineup. It's only a combined 9% owned. I mean, eventually, we're wrong all the time when we tout some of these guys. We're not wrong all the time when it comes to it. So some of the chalkier plays will be good plays. I mean, you can do it. Max multi-entry, I like that style better. Maybe in a 3-max you could do that, but I wouldn't say, hey, I'm playing 2 lineups this week, and here's what I'm doing with them.
Yeah, don't be contrarian without, actual, fact base behind it. Again, yes, by what we're saying, J-Day and Brooks is going to be a contrarian play because of the guys that we touted. But like you were saying, if that's your contrarian play just to be contrarian, really look at, what is the win equity for these guys, especially Day. He's got to return a lot of that value at the top there. And, has he been doing that this season? Not too much outside of the beginning of the year. And so I'm not going to necessarily just play Day, like you were saying, in 1 or 2 lineups. I'd rather spread that across and diversify.
Joe Brown says Hadwin was a withdrawal for personal reasons from Heritage, not injuries. That's good news. He's back and be playing fine. Do you like Tiger here or next week at the Players more? Probably at the Players more, but I probably won't use him at the Players either. Right? That's all depending on price with Tiger and where I project him to be, but probably more. Joey asks, how do you determine how arbitrary the rankings are on Fantasy National? There's a potential that there's almost no statistical difference between a player that is 30th and one that is 57th. That's especially true for shorter sample sizes when you condense down the rounds. That's why I prefer using the custom model. That way I can really focus in on the things that I like a lot in combination with other things and weight them very heavily. Like I believe I weighted strokes gained ball striking at 30% this week, and then I still divvied it up between off the tee and approach, and I weighted off the tee just a little bit more. And then I have the auxiliary ones that I have in at like 10% to go along with it. So that way, if guys are close in one stat, if you weight that stat more, you can kind of filter it out by the other ones that you include in. So that's how I go about it. Is that what you do when you build your models?
Exactly. I want to see, especially on longer courses, I don't necessarily want the proximity from like 150 to 175, 175 to 200 to weigh too much into it. But I still want to see, right, if a guy like Ryan Moore, some of these shorter hitters, if they can't bomb it off the tee, are they apt to, or do they have ability at that range? So, and again, strokes gained putting, right? We talk about all the time. You don't necessarily want to, play that into your custom model, but you want to see where they're at. You want to see how they're playing. And so for me, ball striking always, birdie or better is always in there off the tee, but I'm also looking at par 4, that 450 to 500, and then weighting those, weighting those specifically to see who's coming out. So those are the guys, or those are the stats that I like.
So he also says, how do you take this into consideration when trying to decide between players? I think that's one way to do it. Build the model, weight really what you want, and have a power ranking set out. But even if someone is ranked very highly, you should still click on the name, go into the research of how did he get to this? You have to put some context behind a lot of it, because sometimes numbers will lie to you. So some of the lower ranked players that you're seeing in this field, well, what field did they do it against? Because all the weightings are against the field that they were in that week. So if you have someone like, let's say, Rory. Rory's only playing against the best fields. Tiger is very much the same way. He's only playing against the best guys. So his level of competition and what he does against a certain field is generally going to be more difficult. If you have Kelly Craft, who's beating the shit out of everyone in Punta Cana, then it's a little bit different. So you need to give some context and understand what these numbers are telling you, and that can help you make informed decisions a little bit more. Or you can just roll the dice, take whoever. I mean, that tends to work sometimes too. But you want to use the stats not as gospel, and the power rankings not as gospel, but as something to, A, highlight someone that you wouldn't even be thinking of and put them on your radar. Then you can really dig in to why they might perform well at this course, or just give you a sense of the types of players that you want to congregate around and build your core around this week. That would be my best advice of trying to use all the tools to your advantage. But nothing is gospel when it comes to this stuff. Clark Terrell asks, is FanShare actually accurate? I actually think FanShare is super accurate. They do a very good job of aggregating what the community does. There's always going to be blind spots. Like Tiger is the blind spot this year in certain larger tournaments can affect things. Like millionaire makers are a lot more difficult to project than like a random $4 where you have the same 50,000 people who played the Heritage, they're playing Valero. That one is easier to project because you can see trends forming, who people get talked up in the industry a little bit more. Once you start widening that field and adding some of the more casual fans into it, then it becomes more unpredictable. And Tiger is the ultimate outlier in all of this because not only is it hard to project him, he has an effect on everyone else. But I think the FanShare does a really good job of projecting everything out. How is Finau's ankle? Fine. He played well at the Masters on a bum ankle. Then he played last week and came 6th. I think it's fine. Would you have any concerns?
No, I mean, if it were you and I, or if it were me, no way, I'd be hung up and nursing that ankle, because that was disgusting when you saw that picture post Augusta. But no concerns, right? If he's out there, if he's playing, if he's not complaining about it or whining about it, no concerns for me.
Tron asks, have we discussed weather yet? Came in late. If so, I'll rewind. We did touch it off the very top, but I can hit it up. You know what? I'm actually just going to refresh the page to see if anything came up. I'm using the Charlotte/Douglas Airport wind tower on windfinder.com, and it gives you every 3 hour. Remember, everything's in knots per hour, not miles per hour, so it's like 1.17, I think, per mile. So just like add 1 or 2 on, you're around the same. It looks super windy at like 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. In terms of gusts, the overall wind speed will be around like 8 to 10 miles per hour. The gusts could be up to 20, and then it's relatively even throughout the day. You're going to get around like 15, around 12 in terms of gusts. Not that big of a deal. Windier on Friday, but it does not look like there's a big T advantage. So you don't need to rewind, Tron, although you can. Just go, you can give. I earned your like on that one. You don't need to go back and watch it. I answered your question. Joey, how much would leaving 300 to 500 increase your odds on having a unique team? Is it wise to do this with 20 teams or something like half of them? I think, especially for a tournament like this, I don't really think you need to worry about being duped. If you leave $100 on the table in a tournament like this, you're probably going to be fine. And now at a WGC, in a small field event where there's no cut, then the 300 to 500 or potentially more can come on the table to guarantee you have a unique lineup. But when you're dealing with a cut event with a 156-player field, I don't think there's really a need for that.
Yeah, you don't want to get too cute, right? Kind of connecting that last question. You don't want to be so contrarian that you're trying to find guys that don't necessarily fit into the custom stat model or the narrative that you have. So yeah, you don't leave 500 out at an event like this. I think it's more prudent to look at guys that really fit who you think is going to do well. And if at those price ranges, even getting the full salary, right? I think to me, that's okay. At the most, I'd maybe leave 200 out, but not to do 500. That's pushing a little bit.
Yeah, and listen, I have 400 left on the table in like one of my lineups. I'm just looking through them right now. Yeah. 100, 100, 100, 200, 300, 600 in this one. Maybe I'll change that one. Oh, that's the one where I went out of my way to stack the shorter hitters. So if you're doing a stack, sometimes you commit to the stack and you don't end up filling it out because you like a guy who's like $400 cheaper than another guy. So in that situation, I can see it. But I think just as a rule, I have like 100 or 200 left on the table. I don't think I maxed any out, though. And like 75% of people will use all 50,000. They'll sit there and reconfigure their lineups until they use every cent in their salary cap. So just not having it all should be enough to make sure that you don't get duped in a tournament like this just off the hop anyway. D. Ruff, Adam Schenk, first round leader, or would you rather Hoagie or Buzzelli? I mean, I release a list of who I like as first round leader, so facebook.com/thepme, and you can go check that out. Let's see. Hadwin or Burns? I prefer Hadwin objectively over Burns, although I am using both.
Yeah, I think Hadwin's a better player.
Yes.
I do like, Burns he's putting lights out, and again, Burns has the I beat Tiger on Sunday narrative. But Hadwin is just putting better for me. And but again,
I believe Sam Burns won in Savannah 3 weeks ago too on the Webb.com tour. So, I mean, he opened the year. So at the beginning of the year, 2008, he opened the year as the 874th ranked player in the world. He's now the 165th ranked player in the world. He hasn't missed a cut since a Webb.com event in Panama at the end of January. T2, T8, T12, T49, T20, first, T33. Now this is splitting between the Webb and the PGA Tour, but still that's an ideal amount of consistency. This guy's good. And everyone wants to talk up Neiman. That I know Sam Burns is not in the same pricing tier, but in terms of like up and coming talent that people want to get behind, the new like rookie who's going to be really good. Sam Burns is a skilled player, and if he's going to go like 2% owned, I like it. I own more Hadwin. Hadwin's a better player, but that doesn't mean I can't use Burns as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't get you off on Burns. Like Burns is a guy that, like you said, he's been playing well. And again, Webb.com, yes, it's not as good as a PGA, but you still have guys who are competing to get their card, right? They're hungry. And so a lot of these guys not playing the same types of golf courses, obviously on the PGA, but we saw Sam Burns play well in a spot that we thought he didn't, or he wouldn't have played well. So Sam Burns, I wouldn't talk you off of using him, but between those two guys, I just like Hadwin a little bit better. He's, obviously been showing it a little bit more. And now knowing that it was personal reasons as opposed to an injury where he didn't play the RBC, I'm liking Hadwin a little bit more in that spot. But yeah, Sam Burns is a great player.
Next question, Daniel asks, Seamus Power? No. He got me my top 10 with David Hearn. Hearn Power came through for me last week in the betting market. That's probably enough of dear brother Seamus on that one. Hadwin or Burns? Hadwin over Burns if you had to pick between the one. Let's see. Pat, how come you never see Reid Fowler and Jason Day in the same place at the same time? This is a good question.
Yes, that is a great question. I'd love to be in this.
There's also a guy who's out front who's like the low rent you. He looks like a cross between you and Jason Day. Whenever I go outside smoking, he's out there because he smokes an e-cigarette and stands in like the doorway. And I always hit him with the door. They're like, get the fuck out of the way of the doorway, you moron. And and sometimes I see him and I feel like I come in and it negatively affects how I feel about you, Reid, because you guys kind of look alike.
Yeah, my doppelganger's an asshole. I apologize, but yeah, it's a really good question. I'm gonna talk to Jason Day to see why we're not in the same place. Love to be, because maybe I can get some inside scoop. But yeah, my doppelgangers are everywhere, so I apologize. That guy's an asshole.
So this is going to be mixing two questions together. Ponderosa and David both ask about Lucas Glover. One, Ponderosa asks, is the glove going to be super chalky? The other question is, I'm noticing guys under 7K who people are really on, Trey, Neiman, Grayson, Glover. What are your thoughts on Kevin Tway? He is grading out really well for me. Anytime that you're going to grade off the tee and par 5 scoring really highly, Kevin Tway's going to rate out really well. And I don't think that he's a poor play by any means. I want to see where he actually comes into my custom ranks. I bet you he's like in the 40s. 65. So yeah, he's been bad around the greens, which I have weighted at 5%. Terrible putter, which I have rated at 0. I just have it on my screen. He's a bad long iron player. Now maybe he won't have to hit as many long irons because he has so much distance off the tee. But like he's really propped up because of driving distance and par 5 scoring. He doesn't really do anything else all that well. So if he's not hitting in greens in regulation, it could be a disaster for Kevin Tway. He might be a decent pivot though. The guys that I'm using down in that area as pivot plays, trying to find, let me sort by salary here. I used Harkins and Watney. They're both at $7,000. I just think that they just they rate out very much the same. And I know that people will be on Tway, and actually Nick Watney actually rates out incredibly well for me. If he can ever putt, he's going to be an alright play. Jamie Lovemark's at 7,100. Everyone was all bonkers for Jamie Lovemark 2 weeks ago, and he still rates out really well for a course like this. Vaughn Taylor, who I mentioned earlier, 6,900. Good course history, good par 5 score, good off the tee. Can get really hot with his approaches, and he's just not on anyone's radar. So I think those are some of the players. Scott Stallings is another one at $6,600. If you want to use Chris Stroud, JT Poston, as someone mentioned earlier, I think those guys are all sort of the pivots you want to look at that I would use before Kevin Tway. But again, we're dealing with the crapshoot of $6,000 players. Kevin Tway could be gold down here. Are there any other guys that I didn't just mention from the $7,000 and under level that you like?
Yeah, Harkins is a guy that, like, if you didn't mention him, I was going to mention him because he stats out really well at that 7,000. But a couple other guys, Lovelady. If I look at my stats here, you want to find one key stat. So for me, off the tee is pretty big, and he stats out pretty nicely here. So Lovelady is another guy, and Sam Saunders, again, not great coming in, right? He's not been playing great, but at 6,600, like Sam Saunders is a guy that his talent doesn't match up with his price here. So I'd be willing to take a flyer on Saunders. Like you said, 2 out of 20 lineups for Saunders would be okay for me. And then, Lovelady, outside the guys you mentioned.
Lovelady, he does have that one skill where he is really good off the tee, and he was actually on my radar, and this is one of the things, like you can rate someone highly, and then you go and dig in to see what they do a little bit. So I did that with Lovelady. Like Valero, he missed the cut, and he just bled strokes everywhere, approaches, around the green, on the greens. The tournament before, he came 68th at Shell and gained almost 4 strokes off the tee and still came 68th. Lost through approach. The guy cannot chip whatsoever. So if his irons are bad and he's not hitting greens in regulation, it doesn't matter how many strokes he gains off the tee. He's going to be a disaster on these greens because we already mentioned it's really tough to putt inside 10 feet. So if you have a shit around the green game and you're leaving yourself like 12-foot par putts, you might 3-putt from there. So that's why I ended up getting off Tom Lovelady. I'm not saying you should get off of him, but that's why that was my reasoning for getting off him. And I just could be wrong, and maybe he just kills it off the tee so much it doesn't matter.
Yeah, min price, right? 6,500. You're looking at shots in the dark here. So Do your dig. Like, again, going with that other question, do your research. For me, if I'm taking, crapshoots and shooting in the dark here, I want one of those key stats to potentially pop and maybe find something, right? Maybe he finds something on the range where he gets his irons in play. Is that going to happen? The probability of it happening, probably not. But if it does, that ownership that you have, like you said, 2 or even 3 lineups outside of just one, or the 1 to 5%, not even 5% that you're going to get Lovelady at, that could be a nice GPP play. So take it with a grain of salt because he is the mid price.
Away Jersey 24 makes a point that there's so much variance with golf that it's not crazy to leave more than $1,000 on the table. It's not crazy, but it just feels like when you're constructing these lineups, that you do want to have some win probability baked in. And if you're leaving $1,000 on the table, I feel like you might give up too much win probability. And if you're going to win a giant GPP, yeah, you needed a lineup that no one else has, but you still need to have the guy who wins in it. And if you don't have that, generally speaking, that's going to come from somewhere in the top end. Not always, as we've clearly seen from some of the past few events. But for most of this season, it's been not chalkier guys, but someone from the top 15. So taking as many shots in that area as possible, I always think is the better play.
Yeah, exactly. Again, you're trying to be cute here, right? With leaving $1,000 off. Yes, it's extremely variant, but why leave points off just to be contrarian? So no, yeah, I wouldn't leave $1,000. I can see the argument on why you would do it, but for me, that's just, you're leaving points out there, and I don't want to do that.
Hunter S. Thompson, not dead anymore, in the chat says, pound the fucking like button, people. Could not agree with you more. It's a great thing you can go do right now. You listen to Hunter. Pound the fuck out of it. Just give it a like. Thanks. Thoughts on Lovemark, big hitter, fade, or good pivot play? Good pivot play from my end. Thoughts on Kyle Stanley? Just not feeling Kyle Stanley right now. I know he gained strokes ball striking. I kind of hope, it's weird. I want to use him next week because I think that these Pete Dye colonial tracks really do set up for him well. I think once you start getting to extreme length, and I know he's performed well at Torrey Pines in the past and gagged it down the stretch to Snedeker that year when he put it in the water, then won at a just over 7,400-yard track at Phoenix, but he hasn't been playing up to snuff for where I would like him. Like, he was playing so much better at this point last season. That for me, it's going to be a fade, but I think if you were just to focus on ball striking alone, we know that he can be an elite ball striker. And I can hope he gets some of the mojo back for next week at the Players, where he had a very good performance last season.
Yeah, and if you look at, again, Harkins is right there at 7K, so I like him a little bit better, and even going a little bit up.
It's funny that you say that, because you say I like Harkins more than I like Kyle Stanley, and I'm with you this week, but just saying it out loud sounds really dumb.
Or like
because I don't. And Keith Mitchell at 71. I like Kyle Stanley. So Kyle Stanley's a much better player than those guys. But this week I'm using those two guys. Now I feel like a moron.
Exactly. Right. We kind of contradict ourselves. I mean, even Shane Lowry, right? He's that name recognition down there at that 7K range. It's tough to be off on these guys and then go and say, okay, well, right, we're playing this narrative. For those guys specifically, I'm looking at, again, current form more so, right, for a guy like Kyle Stanley. Kyle Stanley is a streaky player where, he needs to be playing well for us to be using him. So it's weird to say, right, but, we're saying it.
Back to the away jersey conversation. Is going from a guy like Reid to Webb that much in win equity? That's $1,000 difference. I would think so. Just compare the amount of wins these guys have in the past 3 years. Like, Webb hasn't won since... I don't know when. When was the last time Webb won on tour?
I mean, for me, I think
Reid has 6 wins.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
and Reid tends to win in these really strong fields. Webb won the U.S. Open with the cheater putter, and I don't know if he's won since. He may have won a swing event. I have to look that up now because I'm genuinely curious. He has a lot of top fives, but top fives ain't paying the bills if you're not getting the winner in there.
Right. Right. I mean, Wyndham is another, I think maybe because he named his daughter after that tournament.
He won the Shriners Hospital for Children Open during the swing season in 2013. That was his last win.
Yeah. I mean, yes, Reid is he's obviously he's clear in terms of winning more tournaments, but yeah, Webb is a guy that stays around when he's playing well. And again, when he's putting well. He wasn't putting well last season. Now he gets these top 5s, top 10s. We've seen him pop in some of these other strong fields and strong events. But yeah, Patrick Reid it gives you way more win equity.
Someone mentioned the Wyndham Championship. Webb did win that, but that was in 2011. So I can't remember when the putter ban came in, but I don't think he's won since the putter ban. Now I know he's putting a lot better right now, and maybe that's the wrong example. If you say what's the difference between like Casey and DeChambeau, that's $1,000. Maybe you're right, but I feel like Casey, in terms of win probability, that he's going to have himself at the end probably a little bit more than DeChambeau. I do like DeChambeau a lot this week, and like Noren's down in that same price. So maybe those guys are undervalued, but Casey's just been running train all year. Like I think Colin Drew pointed this out, or maybe it was Leone on the Daily Roto podcast, that if you just look at total strokes gained, like a flow chart for like the past 18 months, Casey's about on par with Jordan Spieth. Maybe I should really use Paul Casey. Everything I look at just kind of points to Paul Casey. I understand the point of the $1,000 in terms of win equity, but if we're talking about top-end guys to the next tier of guys, it can be dramatic in the sense of you understand what win probability is. Like no one's really a giant favorite. Like no one has a 30% chance of winning a tournament. If we're talking about actual win probability, the best in this field is probably like 7%, but most guys are at like 0.25%. And that can be a substantial difference if you look at a percentage base between the two and what that difference could mean. I think it happens more between like a $1,000 difference between Noren and Keith Mitchell. That would be huge in terms of win probability.
Exactly. And those top guys, right, like you said, getting that in that top price range, that those top 15 to 20 price range guys, right, there's not a huge difference. But yeah, I mean, Kyle Stanley and like a DeChambeau, for instance, that might be a little bit more for me currently right now, as opposed to, doing Patrick Reed and Webb Simpson.
All right, we're going to go for 5 more minutes, or if the questions dry up, then we'll just get out of here. So load in your last second questions. We're going to not really dive too deep into them. If you have start or sit questions, chase or fade questions, potentially a strategy question, we'll try to dig into that. So 5 more minutes. Remember, episode a like. Thanks a lot for Reid and I. So, Rud Van Can, or one, as they would say in American. Have we identified the chalk bomb for the week? That's not what we do. That's why you need to subscribe to the Tour Junkies podcast and newsletter to find out who the chalk bomb of the week. That's their thing, not mine. Although I did see that Drew Matthews, the guy that won at fantasygolfbag.com, he now does the chalk block of the week too. These days you can rhyme a lot with chalk, so leave that for everyone else, not for me. I'll play the chalk and just be a loser who loses by taking the bad chalk. Tom asked, did Scott Brown single-handedly knock Kisner out of form? Well, it certainly seemed that way on Sunday. I'm not going to lie to you. Kisner, the guy who hits every fairway, could no longer hit the fairway anymore. He's in the middle of the woods every time.
What do you do if you're Kisner and you've played well at this tournament with Scott Brown the last 2 years, but you haven't cashed in? What do you do if you're Kisner? Because Scott Brown is terrible. What do you do? Do you stick with them and say we're going to win this 1 year, or do you just kind of move on?
No, you stick with them. They're like best friends. They play like over like 100 rounds a year together on their home course. They're best pals. Like, why not? I actually think for that team format, you're just better off. Feinberg and I talked about it. If you're ever going to bet it, just anyone who's 35-1 or better, just cross those guys off the list. Just like 2 mid-tier guys that play kind of the same and take them.
Yeah, exactly. The John Rahm, I think you mentioned it with Feinberg. The Rahm. Who was he playing with?
With Wes Bryant.
Yeah, I mean, come on. I mean, it was a nice idea, but no way. Come on.
This question is specifically for you, Reid. Your thoughts on Dylan Fratelli?
God, I mean, I can't figure out Dylan. Like here, he sets up nicely at this course, right? He's a guy that can stroke it off the tee and get out there, but I just can't put my finger on Dylan at this course at that price range. Again, 71. We talked about some of the guys that I like and that we like a little bit better. But he sets up nicely here. So if you wanted to play a quote unquote pivot down here, I wouldn't be opposed to that. But again, I like guys that we talked about earlier a little bit less at that price range. But yeah, I can't, like, for me, I tried to dive a little bit deeper in, and he does set up nicely at this course layout. But, wasn't extremely confident in playing Dylan in a lot of lineups.
One and done suggestions, low owned and high owned. Rory will probably be the highest owned of the week. That's why I picked on the show with Jeff Hughes, DeChambeau. Cust is picking Jason Day. Who are you picking as your one and done?
Luke List.
You haven't used Luke List yet?
I feel like I haven't. I feel like was it? If it's not List, then DeChambeau would be my one and done. If I've used List, that I'd like to go Bryson. I might have used List at API, maybe. And if I did, then DeChambeau, which would have been a better one and done at API. If not List, then I'll use DeChambeau.
I'm trying to see who I have available to me. I've used, because I think this might be, if you haven't used Justin Thomas yet, that might be a nice lower owned play because everyone's going to use Rory. But I figure most people have used Justin Thomas at this point. I already have. I've already used Fowler. I haven't used Rory. Jason Day is sneaky. I think Brooks would be kind of sneaky, as would Hideki. Hideki historically plays really well here. Phil historically plays really well here. And I just don't think you're going to see the same congregation of one-and-done picks because so many people will use Rory or just kind of go off the board. So I think that Brooks, Phil, and Hideki would be the low-owned plays. And I might actually, because I need to catch up. We only have so much time left in this segment. And I actually have a shot to, if I get a win this week and do well at the Players or vice versa, like get a top 3 this week and hit the winner at the Players, I have a chance to win this segment. So I'm really kind of pushing on this segment here and trying to catch up. I'm inside like the top, I want to say 50 right now, but I did the math out that I actually do have a chance. So I do need to go a little bit contrarian. Now I still need to hit, but I can't necessarily go Rory if I know everyone's taking Rory ahead of me. So that would be my mindset on the entire one-and-done plays of the week. Thoughts on Abraham Answer? Do you have any thoughts? And thoughts on Peter Uihlein? I have no thoughts on either.
Yep, same.
Okay, keep going. Shane Lowry, interest? Yes, a little bit. I'm not using it on DK, and I might end up putting in a first-round leader bet or something on him, but he tends to play hard courses really well, and he's playing a little bit better recently. He might be someone to watch for the U.S. Open if he's gearing up in time, but this is theoretically a really decent spot for Shane Lowry. But I'm going with Nick Watney and Harkins and in that range instead. I just like those guys a little bit more right now.
Yeah, Lowry does well at slogfests, right, in those tournaments. So yes, in that narrative, I do like Lowry, but like you said, not necessarily for DraftKings. It's a little bit more of that first round or taking him as a flyer. But yeah.
This guy asked about Xander's ownership this week. And, well, I think he was an excellent betting price. He came in at 100 to 1, which I got on. I have him around 9 to 13% right now, depending on how the distribution goes with Luke List, who he's right by, at exactly the same price. If more people decide they gravitate towards List or Adam Scott in that range, then Xander could be the man who is left out. But I think that he'll be double digits. Yeah.
Same with me. And again, another guy in that price range, Gary Woodland. He's been playing like garbage ever since he won Valspar. But we've seen, this course, right? We've seen guys like Ahan, who's been playing, who didn't miss, 8 cuts or whatever it was before winning this. He's a guy that slots in at that same price that if you feel like List and Schauffele are going to be highly owned, Gary Woodland, who you would think, right, would play well at long courses because he can bomb it off the tee, probably clubs down with those 3 woods. Yeah, he's a guy that I like as a pivot play if you don't want to play the chalk with List or Schauffele. But again, I'd rather go with those guys. But Gary Woodland was a guy that I was trying to dig a little bit deeper into to see if he would be, a decent pivot play. What do you think?
Yeah, I could potentially see it, but
Yeah, it's Gary Woodland.
He's really, like I said, he's really good on those long approaches on these firm greens. Just I have no feel for him right now.
Yeah.
But
I guess I just talked myself.
Listen, if you wanted to get in on him, I get it. It's just not for me.
Yeah, he was just a nice pivot off. I mean, because you see List, these guys. I mean, if you're looking at Fantasy National and we see that potentially that 20% ownership or even a little bit lower for a guy like List, I might move some of those shares, which I probably wouldn't feel 100% confident in, to a guy like Woodland because recency bias for Schauffele, he burned me at RBC. So, maybe a little bit Gary Woodland. But I just wanted, he's a guy that should play well here because it sets up nicely for him. So a little bit interest in him.
The chalk bomb of the week might be Luke List again, by the way.
He usually is the chalk bomb.
No, that is not true. He is not usually the chalk bomb. He's just, a cut this year?
That's true. When he's high priced, let me rephrase that. When he's high priced at like the 9, right above 9K, you're like, well, yeah, he's playing well. So that's why his price garners that. You're like, God, is this a spot where he just doesn't do well? When he's in these spots, yeah, like I can see a Luke List, but my fingers are crossed because I do think List is going to hit one of these times. And we're going to keep on, same thing with Casey, right? We're going to keep on playing this guy until he hits. And that might mean, do we have to wait as long as we did for Paul Casey to win for Luke List? I hope he hits. Because this price now, we saw him at, around 9K or above 9K salary. Now he's down to 74. So you can fit him in a lot of your lineups, but he's in the chalk. So
So the same guy that was talking about leaving the $1,000 on the table, he said perfect lineups don't happen often, but it's amazing how often the perfect lineup falls to the total salary between $4,750 and $49,000. This is true. Then he says don't chase the perfect lineup. That's contradictory to the point of leaving all the money on the table.
Yeah.
So yeah, don't chase the perfect lineup, because if you're trying to get the perfect lineup with like some random dude who comes in 6th and he's a part of the perfect lineup, you're probably not going to find him. That's the problem. There's a reason that sometimes these perfect lineups come in and no one has it because no one was on. Let's see. Who's some random loser in this field? If Steve Marino comes T9 and he allowed you to fit like Rory and someone else into a lineup, or you get Derek Fatauer, Steve Marino, and Sang Moon Bae, who I believe withdrew, so probably not him. But hey, maybe he makes a surprise comeback and you took him anyway. Re-enters the tournament, like someone mysteriously coming in from the Royal Rumble. So yeah, don't chase the perfect lineup. Use your salary cap in this sort of situation because you're just leaving upside on the board. Who is Andrew Curse this week? That would be Jason Day. Thoughts on Duffner? He's going to be incredibly low owned, but that's all I really have to say about him. I'm not using him.
Yeah.
Molinari in one and done. Please, no, thank you. Charles Schwartzel, good vibes from last week. He was striking the irons a little bit better, but Charles Schwartzel has been a disaster off the tee so far this season. So this doesn't seem like a great track for him here. My book has Benny Ann at 80-1. Enticing? Yeah, it is kind of enticing, but I'm already in, and I don't have that book, so if you hadn't made a wager yet, then yeah, I could see that, but I'm already in. I got Brooks at 75-1, so I feel better about that, right? I should.
Yeah,
I think.
absolutely. Yeah, Brooks at 75 is, I mean, that's unbelievable. Yes, obviously the reason why it's there because he hasn't played, but you're not going to get Brooks at 75. I mean, even if he doesn't play well here, you're not going to get him extremely high at this price. So going on Brooks.
All right, I'm going to do a quick Twitter scan to see what I'm missing here. Someone is asking about Darius Geis and Ronald Jones, so thanks for nothing for clogging up my feed. Thanks a lot there, back row fantasy show. God Harkins at 650-1. One time, let's turn this into a Subway footlong. I got him at 350-1. You're doing double what I got. I thought 350 was pretty enticing. I kind of had to. I had to continue to bet him because I was betting Landry for like 4 straight weeks, and then I didn't bet him when he won, and it just made me feel dumb. So now I don't want to miss out. Let's see. Go hard on Bryson. He's hot. Got a win last year when he got hot too. I believe he had a really crappy performance. That's why everyone got off of Bryson the week before he won. Anyway, that's how I remember it that week as justification for not being on him the week that he did win at John Deere to get himself into the Open Championship. But these aren't even questions. These are just statements. So not what I asked for, so go fuck yourself. Next one. All right, that's going to be it. Thank you for tuning in to the live chat. Oh, no, there's one more. Harold Varner thoughts. I bet him his first round leader just because I think it's funny, but no. You probably don't want to, you don't really want to be in the HV3 business right now.
No, he was nice for a little while, but no thank you.
If you are lower in the segment, you shouldn't be wasting time with big names, correct? Should you go off the board a little bit and one and done? I'm not so far off the top that I need to start taking guys that no one's going to take. I just can't take the most popular guy who the few guys ahead of me, the 50 guys ahead of me, are probably going to use at a 50% clip in terms of one and done. So that's why I can drop. I always think that you should you only listen. There's 40 tournaments a year in one and done. Like, you don't need to use losers and scrubs ever in one and done. Yeah. Just pick the good guy who no one else is using. That's just a much better strategy and a more profitable strategy in one and done. And of the guys that the 16 guys we tweet out, I'm currently in first place of everyone right now. So thank you, Bubba Watson, at the match play, and Siwoo Kim for coming in second at Heritage. That helped
that
out.
Was nice.
I had a good run through like March through now, and now I hope to keep it rolling. So we'll see how that goes. Stuart Sink thoughts. Again, I bet him his first round leader, but that's neither here nor there on DFS. And this guy says he does look like a CPA. That's true. If you click on his DraftKings picture, he looks like he looks like he works for Wells Fargo and actually playing in the Wells Fargo. But we'll have some fun with that. Reid Fowler, where can everyone find your work and follow you on Twitter?
Yeah, Reid T. Fowler on Twitter, DraftKings as well. You know, we're doing a lot of new stuff there in terms of looking at football and all that stuff when that comes about. But with golf especially, Reid T. Fowler is where you find all of our course previews, where we're leaning in, and all that good stuff. So Reid T. Fowler everywhere.
All right, you can follow me at the PME on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. My betting cheat sheet is up right now on my Facebook page. It's right at the top, so you can find it no problemo. Actually, when I post this, then it will be second on the page. Still, very near the top of what's going on. Plus, if you just go to the top of all my articles on dkplaybook.com or on the podcast in the description or in the videos in the description, it should have hyperlinks to every piece of content I put out this week. Pride myself on making my work easy to find and accessible and free for everyone. So give the episode a like, all right? And I did a video with the Moose on the Fantasy National YouTube page as well, describing how to properly use that mixed condition model. If you haven't become a member of Fantasy National, it's some good insight to how the site works and how the tools work. So you just want to go check that out. I think it might just shed some light onto what people are doing. At least over $1 million the last 3 weeks on the last 3 DK slates, 1.045 million. Because I won 20, Gup won 20, Drew won $1 million. Other people have been showing me Thunderdome tickets. So it's been working out well for a lot of people. So if you hit the right combination, you can cash in big. I'm Pat Mayo. Thank you for watching. Good luck at the Wells Fargo Championship. I'll see you next time.